Hello, potential friends and adventurers. I'm Em, and today we're going to talk about 10 potential ways you can utilize gods in your campaign. Welcome to the DM table. These are optional, but might bring some flavor that you might have wanted. Let's go in no particular order. Number 1. Quest givers. As quest givers, gods can be interesting because, well, think of it. What can all the things be that gods might need? The concept itself is already interesting. And players, given the right sort of players, might be more inclined to entertain the notion that the quest giver is serious when dealing with gods, But this is a classical utilization, probably one you're well aware of. Therefore, I've put it on the first place, and we can go to number 2, which is backstory. Of course, you may think this is overdone, but how about you do it in an original manner? Say your childhood friend that you've been adventuring with for many months is, no, not a child of God or something like that. No, what if that person is the god that wanted to experience life for themselves? Now, well, this puts player in the interesting situation. Next, number 3, revelation. Somewhere along the line, in the middle of a campaign, or earlier or later, whenever you want, bringing in gods into play before, well, not necessarily signaling or even foreshadowing. It can be out of the blue without foreshadowing or signaling that this will happen, or it can be foreshadowed somewhat, but it can feel like things have become more. They have gotten more depth, more importance. It just sends it up in players' eyes in the potential of the quest in question. In any case, indeed, at number 4, scale itself. The situation is where gods are involved, it's probably something of very great scale. So even if you start your campaign where players themselves are potentially gods or disciples of them, that just gives players the impression of importance of their work. And it's a perhaps more personal relation to their work than if they were just quest givers, because if they are working directly with gods, about gods, or something related to gods that's pretty direct, then scale is by very definition approaching the very top. Now at number 5 we have inversion. It's that Wizard of Oz effect where you sort of have a campaign that radiates scale because of presence of gods from the beginning, and then it turns out later on that the individuals in question weren't gods actually, but either very powerful science or magic or something else was in question, and so on and so forth, and players get to find out more and more about what did it mean actually that there were such characters or devices in their world. And well, it's great for building up further story in an inverted manner, building up from previous impression that the scale is approaching godlike into some other scale that is also greater, but plays with other concepts. Speaking of which, at number 6 we have mysticism, and it depends what you take under mysticism, but I mean everything that's mystical and spiritual. You have philosophies, you have religions, you have all kinds of things that the players can explore for themselves and amongst themselves and amongst others in your world as well, because they now have room for playing along with these things, playing with the concepts themselves, representing some concepts, talking about others, debating, and there is much story to be had and all that spiritual potential that just simply mundane does not explain easily. Unlike with the scale, this is a more indirect situation where gods may not even be present personally whatsoever, but it's sort of their meaning and their influence, even if they indeed aren't in the world whatsoever, is the thing that produces more mysticalness and debate and so on and so forth. And then at number 7 we have something that steps the previous several things up. We have use for complexity. Say you wanted to combine something very complicated. Say you wanted characters that you can have be very intelligent and competent and not this is why this is good, because it doesn't necessarily overshadow players would expect potentially that gods are competent and so on and so forth, smart and perceptive and so on, and then you can have all kinds of overarching plans and plots and situations and triggers that happen in such ways that you would otherwise not have the opportunity to try. You can have all kinds of really complicated interactions between multiple characters due to gods being assumed to be very competent, able of prediction, and so on and so forth. And you'll have essentially characters that will live up to it in players' minds before you expose it, so that they don't feel like it came out of nowhere completely. That this is something that's within the concept realistic to happen. And that's not the only way to achieve such great complexity, but it's certainly one of the ways why you would be able to have more fun when you have gods in your campaign. Next one, 8, is culture. You can have all kinds of culture stem from all kinds of religion and philosophy and other things that we mentioned before, and this culture can be explored in interesting manners. The influence of gods, whether present or absent, creates all kinds of situations in culture all around the world, and then you can expand upon that and add to your lore. Develop, and let players play with it, and they develop for themselves some impressions and what to play. Then at number 9 we have lore. You can have lots of past lore come from just what the gods have done in the past and what are they doing and what are they doing currently. It's classical mythological thing where it can add flavor without being as direct. You can have as much lore as you want or as little. It can be pretty mysterious or pretty obvious. It can transition from one into the other. But there's one thing that also separates this from some of the previous points, and that's where you can find some already known gods and get some interesting parallel lore from here, from Earth's historical examples of mythological and so on figures, where you can have some pretty thick lore that can be somewhat differentiated, altered, gotten into additional different concepts and contexts and situations and permutations, and then you can do all kinds of things that's fun and interesting, and you have some sort of unique yet recognizable lore that's kind of done in a fun and new manner, where players feel like they could start interacting on their knowledge, but then, interesting things happen with differences and specialties of your version. The flavor is then all there, really. And at 10, we have possibility. If none of these were already sufficient, or all of these together, possibility in gods is kind of technically limitless. So I've played the game once where a goddess gave birth to herself, sort of. I don't exactly know how she specifically did it, but you can have any sort of paradoxical or strange or wondrous or bizarre or enlightening or wondrous thing happen when gods are involved, amongst other things. You have your hands untied for this design point, so find something interesting that you'll do best with this. That's why it's great to have possibility. And therefore, adventure, if you thought this was unique, maybe you can spare a click and I could see you here next week. I wish you luck on your adventure. Bye.